It's my honor and privilege to introduce Dominie Cappadonna today. She's written what she'd like me to say. Oh, my glasses. But it's okay, I don't need him to read this. And because her language is so beautiful, I want to read this rather than doing what I do in ad-libbing. Dominie Cappadonna offers her work, Radiant Living, Luminous Dying, guiding midlife, elder passages and beyond, as a way to encourage living fully, loving deeply, and dying consciously. She is trained as a transpersonal psychotherapist, eco-psychologist, and internationally certified death awareness educator and contemplative chaplain. Based on her intimate life with death and dying, she co-created the first integrative medical team in the world in refugee medicine and worked in the killing fields of Cambodia. From this, she deeply appreciates the resiliency of our human spirit. Along with her other roles, she currently offers seminars nationally called Befriending Small Deaths, Big Deaths, of which you'll get a taste today. And she offers trainings for professionals in conscious aging, death, dying, and bereavement. And I would just like to thank you right now because she has dealt with our changing the location, errors in the postcards, and the setup today, given the snafu on the timing. I think how she is, look at that smile. She's got this widest, most warm smile. And she's just dealt with all of this with such grace that you just got to know she can teach us something about the grace we're all going to need to get through life and get through the ending of it. So please let's welcome Dominie Cappadonna.
What a beautiful introduction. Thank you, Vicki. Good morning. I have felt so warmly welcomed coming in the door, and it's so good to be with you this morning. And I'm grateful we're together in exploring how our small deaths in life may prepare us for the big death at the end of life. Hello, hello. That's a good reminder for us to turn off our cell phones. And just take a moment. It's fine with me that they ring. They're often very comical or musical, lyrical tones. Today, sharing and learning may yield insight, compassion, resilience, wisdom, and gratitude. So let's take a moment just to self-settle, deepening even more so that we can really feel ourselves being fully present. And scoot your chairs if you can't see. All right. I have to admit, I laughed when I saw the marketing piece that mentioned small death, bog deaths. I don't know how many of you received that. Would you raise your hands? Oh, goody. All right. So you may have joined me in the chuckle of that. And so I thought to myself, giggling all the way, maybe I should come dressed as the creature of the Black Lagoon, you know, and really appear as a bog deather. Yet, sadly, it was prophetic for me in being bogged down with a small death in health this week. I've had a medical condition that is arising in my eyes very unexpectedly, which has taken time, space, and energy, and I need to rest my eyes this week. So I'm so glad to be here, and I apologize. I may need to read my notes more than I had planned to do, and that's just because of my eyes today. I've appreciated attending Compassion and Choices events because I've learned so much every time I've been here. And I hope in a small way to give back what I've received. So I'd love to ask you, how many of you opened your Compassion and Choices magazine of this month to the article of Talking Turkey on Thanksgiving? Would you raise your hands? All right, well, this is an article about sharing your end-of-life wishes around the Thanksgiving table. So if you choose to talk turkey, perhaps your own reflections today might be the cranberries and the side dishes of your talk, of talking turkey. And these cranberries and side dishes may be of you sharing resiliency, wisdoms, gratitudes gained through your small deaths, which prepare you mentally and emotionally in an embodied way for the end of life. Because if we're prepared with our small deaths, think how potent our end-of-life wishes can be, because we're fully conscious with them. I'm so happy we have this beautiful, spacious view, and a view of the mountains, and a view of the sky, because that allows us to have a big view and a spacious view that beams in to be with us. And in being with our small deaths, we may want to adopt an altitudinal attitude, in being with our material today. And what I mean by that is a big sky mind view of our small deaths, a bird's eye view of our small deaths, a 14,000 foot mountain peak view, or at the very least, perched on top of the Flatirons. In other words, let's be mindful of not feeling overwhelmed with the material on our small deaths today, and remain authentic and present with our small deaths. An aim and aspiration is to offer material on ways we've been preparing and are preparing. And I'd like to unfurl our conversation in this way. First, an overview, where we have the opportunity to question with our minds such things as, what is a small death? Why consider small deaths? And I'd like to share a little current literature. And then feeling with our hearts into compassion, resiliency, wisdom, and gratitude. And then end with embodying our direct experience through examples and stories of our own with small deaths. And we'll do so with our learning template, which you have as part of your handout in your lap. And at the end, we'll gather in clans of 4 and share with each other what we've discovered. And then we'll end with a cornucopia of gratitudes. How does that sound for our morning? Is that okay? All right. So, what is a small death? A small death is one we live to tell about. A small death is non-finite, meaning limited in size and extent. And that's what Darcy Harris and author of a book called Counting Our Losses, calls small deaths non-finite. So limited in size and extent. Not that our experiences feel small in impact, because the smallest thing might rock our world. So it's not about the size of our emotion, it's about the size of the event, that it doesn't kill us, in other words. So I'd like to share a cartoon I saw in the doctor's office this week that might illustrate this. Imagine that you're looking at the cartoon and it's a picture of a jet flying through the air, and we are the watchers and we're up in the air too. So we're seeing the two men in the cockpit and we're overhearing their voice. And the pilot is saying to the co-pilot, "The fuel light went on, Frank. The fuel light went on. We're all going to die. We're all going to die." Wait. Oh, my mistake. It's just the intercom light. It's just the intercom light. So today we're talking about the intercom light. We're talking about the small deaths. Not the plane going down, the big death at the end of our life. So let's change the word intercom, as in the cartoon, to inner compassion and inner communication, inner communication about what is occurring within ourselves. And we'll come back to this. Small deaths are the ones which are internal in nature, something that dies within us, that doesn't end our lives. And we'll look more at that when we work with our small deaths template. Why consider small deaths? And for that, I'd like to ask our first reader, Carol, to come up to the mic. I've included other voices because I feel it's more interesting to have a variety.
Thank you. You're welcome. I'm Carol, and sometimes it's helpful to hear the voice a minute so that you can get a real handle on what I'm actually going to say. Nancy Bjorst, in her book, Necessary Losses, states that the losses, small deaths, that we experience are necessary for us to grow and adapt as a part of our normal functioning. Loss is natural, unavoidable, and inexorable. Throughout our lives, we grow by giving up. We give up some of our deepest attachments to others, people, places, and things. We give up certain cherished parts of ourselves. We must confront it in the dreams we dream, as well as in our intimate relationships, all that we never will have and never will be. Passionate investment leaves us vulnerable to loss, and sometimes, no matter how clever we are, we must lose.
Well done, thank you. And I'll take your little card. Sure. Thank you so much, Carol.
Sure.
Well, there's a great deal of literature on loss and grieving with final deaths. There's scant amount of literature about non-death losses. Yet we're shaped by them, aren't we? We're implicated by them in navigating our world. So some reasons literature may be scant are ones I've just considered, and you may have some of your own. Small deaths may be hidden deaths that we gloss over. We think, oh, this is no big deal. And yet, truly it is. A small death may be one that's disenfranchised by the culture, who grants them no real significance, and yet we feel bereft. One example could be a breakup of a gay marriage in a homophobic small town, where the marriage was never deemed or acknowledged. Also, small deaths are highly subjective because it depends on how we respond. And in addition, loss and change are a part of the natural fabric of living life. And we beings are usually resilient and bounce back. And not this moment, but in your handouts, when you go home, you'll notice a handout for books. And these are the best books I have found that share about small deaths, and there are not many. Can having small deaths throughout life help us when we encounter death itself? That seems to be, for me, an obvious yes, because anything we practice, we gain a sense of mastery with. There's a beautiful expression that goes, excuse me, if we die before we die, when we die, we will not die. So these moment-to-moment dying in small ways help us to build a sense of relaxation and letting go. And in a discussion on this topic of small deaths between Rabbi Zalman Schachter, how many of you know him? He's a wonderful friend to us spiritually in our community. And he had a discussion with Tessa Balecki, who is a Christian hermit, as well as Dr. Edward Bastian, who is a Buddhist. And Edward Bastian's response is, and our second reader, watch the cord.
Okay. My own brushes with death have really made me question deeply those parts of myself that I have to let die. A sense of control is one of them. But when I really begin to think about this, it occurs to me that from a certain perspective, our whole life seems to be like a series of momentary deaths, a continual process of dying, of letting go. Could we not use these momentary deaths to help prepare us for the big death?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's follow on this theme into heart practices now. We're leaving some of the more mental questions, and we're now dropping down into our heartfulness. And we're beginning now with compassion. We'll be looking at compassion, resilience, and wisdom and gratitude. So beginning with compassion, you know, within compassion and choices, the focus of our compassion may often be those who are suffering at the end of life and how to best serve them. Yet for compassion to be full, we need to include ourselves. For compassion to be full compassion, we need to include ourselves. So today the emphasis will be on inner compassion for our small deaths, ones that we've recognized or are just surfacing. And Stephen Levine, author of 1 Year to Live and also the book Who Dies and Others, writes this.
Nice to be back. He talks about the little injuries and losses that we sustain throughout our lives that we overlook and let chip away at us. He questions at one point, if we were able to have mercy for ourselves and acknowledge these little losses, would the losses of those we love be as big and hurt so much? A new wound is most likely going to hurt more if it is at the point of a reopened wound. So Mindfulness helps us learn to acknowledge and bring into our full consciousness that which is usually below the surface, despite how much it can impact us. With practice, we practice having compassion for these thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Even if it feels rote or fake, we go through the process until our barriers begin to melt, and we can hold our pain, our grief, our illness in our conscious awareness and experience patience, compassion, and equanimity.
Wonderful reader. Thank you. And Aziza, if you'll begin to come up. Dr. Joan Halifax, author of the book Being with Dying, Cultivating Compassion and Fearlessness in the Presence of Death, suggests this compassion process. And with this actual compassion process, you're more than welcome to uncross your legs so that you can put your feet straight down on the floor and really ground, so that you can self-settle in your chair. And you're welcome to close your eyes as Aziza offers us an actual compassion process.
Transforming pain with affirmations of compassion. May my suffering show me the way to compassion. May I freely receive others' love and compassion. May I experience my pain with compassion. May I be open to feel my pain. May I be free from suffering. May I connect with all those who have pain like I am experiencing. Although I am in pain, so are many others. May those with pain like mine be free of their suffering.
Thank you, Aziza. And just taking a moment and a deep breath, letting in the softness of your own compassionate feelings with yourselves. Because if you're here, and if we're members of Compassion and Choices, it means that our hearts are wide open in compassion for others. So including yourself in compassion for your own feelings. Our next quality after compassion is resiliency. And Vicki, if you'd like to come up and take this chair up here, that would be wonderful. Resiliency is a hot topic in the death, dying, and bereavement community, as well as in society at large. And one highlight on resiliency that you may be familiar with or may not be familiar with is the wonderful research by Tedeschi and Calhoun on post-traumatic growth. That's post-traumatic growth, PTG, instead of post-traumatic stress syndrome. So post-traumatic growth is the feeling of doing well. Is the feeling of doing well, of being resilient. And many are researching this now, including our own Bob Scare here in Boulder, who works on trauma. Other words that may be used would be the word that Viktor Frankl used. He used the word toughness and hardness. Other words that we can use are inner optimism, learned resourcefulness, rebounding, bouncing back, self-righting, phoenix phenomena, the phoenix rising out of the ashes. So take a moment just in yourself, and again, you may want to close your eyes for this as well, and consider for yourself a recent setback or a small death from which you bounced back. And bring this to mind silently. A recent small death or setback where you bounced back. And just dwell on that for a moment. And allow yourself to feel what that feels like. And breathe into it. It may be the smallest thing. It may be a bounce back from a cold. Maybe a bounce back by having new sheetrock in your basement and have that painted and begin to restore your basement after the flooding. Thank you. All right. You have a resiliency handout in your packet that you'll be looking at later when we actually look together at our small deaths packet. It's a two-sided handout and it's very useful. So when you go home, you can particularly study it. Now, bouncing back, rebounding, is often found in storytelling and poetry, as these are the oldest healing arts in the world. So raise your hand if you've attended a CWA, a Council on World Affairs. Oh yeah, I figured I'd seen most of you there. So aren't we familiar with how packed the storytelling sessions are there? It's usually standing room only. Storytelling has human appeal. And Vicky's just fine. It's not that she's fainting. This is part of the skit here. I was So this tale is from the oldest continuously lived in pueblo in North America, which is the Acoma Pueblo, and this version is by Simon Ortez, and it's called Skeleton Fixer. And I have permission to offer this, and Vicky has agreed to participate. This is very playful. And let me know if you can hear me. All right, I'll stand this way.
I can't see Vicky on me.
Oh, and we need to see Vicky. Vicky, can you, in your state of body decomposition, can you move forward? Perfect. What happened here? Now this is called Skeleton Fixer. What happened here, she asked. Some kind of accident? Words like bones scattered all over the place. Old woman badger traveled from place to place searching for skeleton bones. There was something only she could do with them. On the smooth sand, old woman badger started laying out the bones. It was a great puzzle for her. She started with the toes. She loved the curve, like a new moon, like a white whisker hair. Without thinking, she knew their direction, laying each toe bone to walk east. Yes, I know it must have been this way, she said. Yes, she talked to herself as she worked. She strung the spine bones as beautiful as any shell necklace. The leg bones were running so fast, dust from the ankle joints surrounded the wind. Oh, poor dear, who left your bones here? I wonder who you are. Old skeleton fixer spoke to the bones because things don't die. Things don't die. They fall to pieces maybe, get scattered or separated, but old badger woman can tell how they once fit together. Though she didn't recognize the bones, she could not stop. She loved them anyway. She took great care with the ribs, marveling at the structure, which had contained the lungs and the heart. Skeleton fixer had never heard of such things as souls. She was certain of only bones. But where a heart once beat, there was only sand. Oh, I will find you a new one, something around here. I'll find you a new heart. And a yellow butterfly flew up from the grass at her feet. Ah, I know how your breath left you, like butterflies over an edge, not falling but fluttering, their wings rainbow colors. Wherever they are, your heart is. She worked all day. Old badger woman worked all day. She was so careful with this one. It felt like the most special of all. Felt like the most special of all. Old badger woman didn't stop until the last spine bone was arranged at the base of the tail. Ah, moo-oo, my dear one, these words are bones. And she repeated this 4 times. Pa, 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 pa. Old coyote jumped up and took off running. She never even said thanks. Skeleton fixer shook her head slowly. It is surprising sometimes, she said, how these things turn out. But she never has stopped fixing the poor scattered bones she finds. Thank you, Vicki. I love this story because I feel it's a beautiful story about bouncing up, resilience, and the phoenix rising quality of our capacity with our small deaths to use them and to build upon them. The next quality is wisdom. And in a sentence, and just first thought, best thought, how would you define wisdom? Raise your hand if you have a definition of wisdom. Aziza. And speak up for us.
Knowledge plus heart equals wisdom.
Knowledge of heart equals wisdom. Thank you. It's beautiful. Anyone else? How would you define wisdom?
Old people.
All people. All right. Well, you're right, because there's a knowing that's gained by having many experiences in life. So in the continuity of our aging, that's exactly what we've been gathering. And we mine the gold of a challenging experience for its lessons and our lasting meaning. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who is a Jungian analyst and a storyteller, suggests in her seminars called Strong in the Broken Places that wisdom arises from our wounding. That wisdom arises from our wounding. And just consider that for a moment to see if that feels true for you. If the wisdom you've garnered, the wisdom you've harvested, has actually come from setbacks, from falling down, from mistakes, from a sense of feeling a deep aspect of your own being. So that you've learned, well, I think I'll do it differently next time. There must be another way to go about this. I need to be more awake. I need to be more conscious. The last quality we'll work with before we turn to our template is gratitude. And it's said that a grateful heart cannot be broken. A grateful heart cannot be broken. Some say that gratitude is a deep bow to life and the acknowledgement of the grace and the gifts that come from life's grit. The grace and the gifts that come from life's grit. As November is a month of gratitude and thanksgiving, when we extend this gratitude practice of thanksgiving to our small deaths and what they teach us, we're rich indeed with humility and renewal of spirit and fortitude. We will explore gratitude on our template in a moment, and we'll close our session with a gratitude process. So what I'd love to have you do now is that in your lap, perhaps you'll find a handout that says, Small Deaths in Daily Life. So if you'll pull that one out, that's different from the handout on books and the handout on resiliency.
What does it look like?
It looks like it will say at the top, Small Deaths in Daily Life. It says way at the top, Small Deaths in Daily Life, and it's a big fat handout. Thank you. The reference for this is Counting Our Losses, Reflecting on Change, Loss, and Transition in Everyday Life by Darcy Harris. And I would love to have us consider that this is a template for further contemplation and consideration. So our approach today with this material is our 14,000 foot sitting on the mountain peak. In other words, big sky mind. And looking at it in this way. And at home, with safety and or professional help, you have an optional possibility of a deeper view and contemplation. So as we're going through these various small death losses, you'll be looking at small deaths in your life, and choose a moderate one. Choose one that is not overwhelming for you in this setting. Do I have your agreement on that? All right, thank you. And we're going to spend about 5 minutes on each one, and you'll need your pen. While you're getting out your pen, I just want to say a word about finding comfort in memory, because we often are not accustomed to thinking of grief as a process of finding comfort. This idea can seem a bit odd, but that's precisely what resilient people do. Regardless of what the relationship was actually like, or the people, place, or thing was actually like, resilient people are generally better able to gain a feeling of comfort from remembering the person, place, or thing. So you'll be remembering some small deaths. And the idea of that is it brings it up into the spaciousness, into the air, and allows also for conversation about it in our small groups. So this is actually resilience building. All right. Small deaths in daily life. We're going to work with 4 small deaths in daily life now that are common. The first one, loss of the view of the world or others. Loss of the view of the world or others. And there are 2 examples, and I'd like you to just silently read the one under loss of safety and security. Just read that one paragraph silently. There are a number of examples of loss of safety and security. However, for today, I'm using the example of traumatic events and mass disasters in the public sphere. And so we're looking at small death, non-finite death, such as the Colorado flooding. And I would like you to stand up if you have felt affected by our Colorado flooding. Will you please stand up? And this could be affected not only with your home, but it could be a loss of your favorite walk. It could be a loss of an ecosystem. It could be your feeling about loss of the birds who became so drenched that they got too cold and couldn't find food. It can be all kinds of small deaths related to flooding. So we can use that as an example here. And if you were not feeling affected by the Colorado flooding, either in a collective sense or in a personal sense, you may want to stop a moment and just consider another mass disaster. And certainly one that comes to mind is what? Pardon?
9/11.
9/11, right.
Filipino term.
Pardon?
The Filipino
Tornado.
That's right.
Sandy.
Yeah, Sandy, exactly. Or the tornadoes, the hurricanes. There's so many we can name. I'm choosing one to highlight just because it's up close and personal for us here in Boulder. So you're welcome to focus on any large collective disaster that catches your own heart. And then look at the questions, and with your pen, notice how it felt like a small death to you. What died inside of you? Was it, here's an example, a small death might be a belief in how the weather's forecast. You might feel like, gee, the meteorologist really goofed on that. That might be a small, and that's just an example that comes off the top of my head. I don't personally feel that. But in other words, a small death in belief. Or it might be an impatience with how long it's taken for those affected by Sandy to receive full help. So that might be a distrust of help, of feet on the ground. Whatever that small death might be for you, just jot a note. What challenged you about it? It was the Colorado flooding. It could be feeling the sadness, a small death for the birds, the animals that didn't survive, the creeks that changed their bed, the trees that were downed. It can be a sadness or a small death of missing a neighbor. Anything at all that just touches you about that. So just write that down.
Yeah, I was going to say that's today.
And it's just a small note because we have a number of categories to
I
go.
was going to write that down here.
And then the next question, how am I compassionate with myself about this? What do I tell myself that is self-soothing? How do I soothe myself if I feel this sense of heartbrokenness or a sense of wincing around something of a tragedy that's happened to a large number of people and land? How do you self-soothe? And the third one, what positive or resilient coping modes have you developed over years to meet the challenge? How do you bounce back from a small death of a national or local disaster or tragedy? How do you reconcile or be with yourself about that? What's strengthening within your own nature? And then when you turn the page, what wisdom do you glean from both the challenge and the way you respond? What wisdom do you glean? What do you learn about yourself when you're faced with a collective disaster? What wisdom do you gain? An example for me of a wisdom in a global humanitarian disaster like being in the killing fields of Cambodia, the wisdom I garnered from that was the resilience of the human spirit. Here were people who had lost everything, most of their families, their country, their life as they knew it, on and on. So any refugee population, of which we have many on the planet, show such a profound degree of resilience of spirit. So the wisdom I garnered was how resilient we really are, way down deep inside. And that wisdom has sustained me in my own small deaths. Moving now to relational losses. And please do not feel troubled if one of these categories or two of these categories don't touch you particularly. It's just fine. There are 4 of them, and one might stand out to you as being particularly sensitive or tender for you. A second small death that we experience through living life are relational losses. And the one example I've chosen out of a number of relational losses is loss related to developmental milestones, which are events or markers along life's way that sculpts, defines, or enriches us, and often feels like a small death. So I'd love to hear from you. I mentioned empty nest when children leave home, but what are some of the other milestones that have the component of a small death in it for you? What other milestones?
At
Yeah.
our age, it's friends.
Pardon?
At my age, it's friends.
At her age, it's friends. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Retirement.
Retirement. Excellent. Yes, exactly. What about marriage? We die to being single, and we live, we move into a new life as a couple. What other milestones, what other features of small death accompany each milestone that you can think of? Retirement, loss of friends, loss of pets who age with us and pass, marriage, empty nest, menopause. Yeah.
Unemployability?
Yes, unemployability, and we will actually get to that. That's an actual category. Thank you for that. Anything else? Yeah.
Moving to a new community.
Yes, moving to a new community. Wonderful. And what about divorcing? There's often a small death in divorcing.
Health.
Pardon?
Health.
Health. Yes. Health. And there's actually a section on that too. Thank you for bringing that up. Losing our teeth. And waiting for the tooth fairy. For women having our first period. You know, there are many, many ones we can mention. But these are milestones. These are part of the threshold passages we go through in life. So what I'd love to have you do now is to look at a rite of passage, a milestone for yourself, and write that down. A milestone where you may experience that sense of small death in the milestone. And then look at your next question. What is challenging about this milestone for you, of this small death? So mention what challenges you. What is the feeling in this small death? What is the thought? And what do you tell yourself that is self-soothing? Or what then did you tell yourself that was self-soothing? One example, empty nest. What might you have said to yourself in facing the empty nest stage when children grew up and left? What soothed you when you thought more about that? That would be an example. Or retirement. What soothed you in thinking about that? And what positive and resilient coping modes have you developed over the years to meet the challenge of a milestone small death? What resiliency? And what wisdom did you glean from the challenge and the way you responded? What wisdom? And for whom and for what are you grateful? And moving right along now. Under the relational loss is the second example, and this is loss of meaning or a sense of justice in the world. Yeah.
As we're doing this, it's not all small losses are the same size.
That's right.
Do you touch base on that aspect at all?
Sure. Not all small losses are of the same size. This is entirely subjective to your own valuing. So it's this is intrinsic within your own nature. All right, so with loss of meaning or a sense of justice in the world, the one I chose is anguish over our human condition. We may suffer existentially as we encounter our mortality, encounter our very existence.
Page 3.
In our daily lives, we weave together interests, desires, cares, and loves, and with things, people, places, experiences, activities, and others into an integrated web of life. So experiences that lead to existential suffering shatter the integrity of our daily life pattern. And so a small death, non-finite, such as loss of a loved one through death, loss of physical abilities, loss of place, loss of relationships with others. And I'd like to offer just a small written piece on the loss of place. This is written by a woman who says, "Some of my most painful losses have been places, the death of places. After 20 years, I had to leave my garden that I literally poured my youth into creating. I had to leave the soil, If you're a gardener and you've had a garden in a harsh place and you've had to build up the soil from nothing and you have to leave that soil, believe me, that's a death. And it happened to me twice. The second time I had to wrench myself away from the soil. I had to again leave another garden. For some, that may sound like nothing. But for me, these deaths were terrible. That might answer your question. Every small death is equated in our heart. It's very unique to us.
You had to leave your.
So, let's see, where am I? For some, this may sound like nothing, but for me, these deaths were terrible. It wasn't just the loss of the place, it was the loss of identity. The death of chapters in my life. The death of who I thought I was. And then you realize, no, this isn't who I am. So these are deaths that can be called daily dying. So a couple of different words for it. Small deaths, non-finite deaths, daily dying. Whatever phrase or one that you come up with yourself is very useful. So, some anguish over human condition. Name for yourself one experience of a small death for you where you encounter your mortality, whether it's loss of place or loss of a desire, loss of an activity, something that shatters the integrity of your daily life pattern. In the flooding, it could have been loss of an entire home. So name one that comes to mind. And notice how you comfort or soothe yourself. And notice a resilient coping style that you've developed that you can apply to this. And notice a wisdom. Notice to whom or to what you're grateful. Knowing you'll be taking these templates home with you, I'm moving through now just a little more quickly, just for our timing, so that we have time to share in our small clans. Turning the page to page 4. Loss of the view of self as worthy or valuable. That's another small death. Loss of a view of self as worthy or valuable. And there are many examples. The one I've chosen is loss of employment. Because the loss of employment means not just the loss of income and security, but also a significant source of identity and self-esteem. How we view ourselves when we have no outlet for our expertise or feel disconnected from a sense of community can have a deeper repercussion. So if this has occurred for you in terms of loss of employment, then let's look at the loss, the small death, as perhaps loss of regular contact in work, money, maintaining a certain standard of living, health insurance, assumptions about justice and life that can be shattered, such as we're often taught that if we work hard, we'll be rewarded. So notice if these possibilities have touched you. And if not, just sitting quietly. And if you have in your life experienced a loss of employment where it felt like a small death, notice what is challenging within your nature. What did this small death challenge in you? And how are you soothing or self-compassionate about meeting that challenge? Were there any resilient coping styles that came from that? Something you learned about resilience in bouncing back from unemployment or not being employable, age and stage-wise. A wisdom you may have gained in facing this small death. And a gratitude. And knowing you can go back to this at home at a later time. Turning now to the last one, loss of functionality. Many examples, the one I chose is chronic degenerative conditions, disability and loss. And while that may not be happening for you, it may be happening to someone in your family or friends. So this allows us to feel even more compassionate. Because chronic illness can be an unsettling experience as a day-to-day experience is radically shifted in new and unpredictable ways. What we take for granted is disrupted, causing a major disruption. And a small death around this causes us to rethink our biography, our self-concept, and our future. So if we ourselves have a chronic disease, or we're with family or friends, or we're professionally working in a caregiving situation, some of the small deaths might be self-identity. It's not who I was. What's happened to me? Who am I now? Maybe a loss of control, a range of choices. What can we or can we not do now? It may touch very deeply on our sense of independence and how hard that is. We know how hard it is to give up car keys if we can no longer see or are unsafe to drive, let alone in a chronic illness. So notice if this is true for you yourself, if you have a chronic illness or are close to someone who does. What is challenging? What is challenged in your own nature about that? And Vicki, if you could help me pass these out, that would be great. And what resilient coping mode have you developed? And you may have had to develop it on the fly. And what wisdom are you gaining from a chronic illness or noticing in being with someone else who has one? What wisdom are you noticing for yourself? And for whom and for what are you grateful? Within a chronic illness, suffering a small death, what's a shining light of gratitude? It may be gratitude for a caregiver. It may be gratitude that your ears work well. Maybe gratitude that the chronic illness does not keep you from eating everything you want to eat. What is your gratitude? And we're passing around little slips of paper, and if you'll each take one, and just sit for a moment, because this is a lot of material, and we've looked at in very distinct ways 4 different categories of small deaths, starting with loss of view of the world or others, relational losses, loss of meaning or a sense of justice in the world. We've looked at loss of view of self as worthy or valuable, such as in loss of employment and loss of functionality. So that's a lot. It's a lot to process. And just sit quietly with yourself for a moment. And of everything that's been shared or that has been moving in the back roads of your mind, notice one thing you're grateful for in this month of gratitude and write it on the slip. And because these may be said out loud at the end, you may want to stay anonymous. So let's say, for example, you're grateful for your husband or your wife. You may say, I'm grateful for my husband or my wife, instead of, I'm grateful for Mary. So that just keeps your anonymity. And then we'll collect the slips in this basket. And we'll begin now to meet in clans and small groups. So simply fold your gratitude when you have it, and if you'll pass it down to the right, and would you mind collecting them in the cornucopia?
Pass them to their right.
Pass them down to the right to the door, and you can just fold them and pass them along. And then what I'd love to have you do is to gather now in little clans of 4. Do you need a bathroom break? Would that be useful to you? All right, then we'll just stay with the process as it is. And turn your chairs and be with 3 others. So gather in little clans of 4. So that you're just turning your chair around, we're going to close by reading a gratitude.
I get inspiration.
All right. All right. Ollie, Ollie in, free, free, free. Let's come into silence. And what I'd love to have you do is just simply in closing, stand up and read a gratitude. And we'll do this very quickly as our closing. Aziza, may we start with you?
Yes. I'm grateful to my husband for his love and support.
Yes. Sunshine.
Good. All right. Yeah.
I'm grateful for my spouse.
Good. Thank you.
Gratitude that my children and grandchildren lives in Boulder to support me when needed.
Excellent. Thank you. In the back. Yeah.
I'm grateful I'm able to still live in my home.
Yes. Big one. Yeah.
Grateful I was able to have my family.
Yes. Thank you.
Grateful to be alive in the moment.
Good one. Yeah.
This was acceptance of the, I'm sorry, I can't read the last word, that's really important.
All right.
Maybe condition or something like that, acceptance.
Acceptance. That in and of itself is a full sentence, isn't it? Yeah. Next. Sam?
I've got two.
Good.
First one is the wisdom, insight, compassion, and beauty of my daughter.
Oh, lovely.
And that so speaks to me. And the second one is memories.
Oh, very fine. Thank you, Sam. Yes.
Grateful financially okay.
Good. It's always a good thing. Yeah.
Grateful for love of children and grandchildren.
Yes.
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 In the back? Okay.
We didn't get it.
You didn't get any. Oh, share. All right, will someone else stand and share while I just pass the cornucopia?
I'm grateful for my husband, not me. I'm grateful for beauty of nature and my sweet wife and relative abundance.
Beautiful, thank you. Chuck?
Family support during home loss.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm grateful for my husband, who is a wonderful caregiver.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm grateful for family.
In the back?
For friends and family. Grateful for friends and family.
Yes.
My inner soul, wisdom that stays in the head of truth.
Say that again.
My inner soul, wisdom that stays in the head of truth.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Lead in the head.
Grateful for my kids.
Grateful for the freedom I have.
Grateful for more time to read.
Grateful for knowing what I know.
Grateful for the ability to see new, unexpected, infinite solutions.
Wow.
Gratitude to my doctors.
All right. Thank you. And taking a very deep breath in closing now. And silently saying the words, thank you, silently, to remind yourself of the gift of your breath and how lucky you are to be alive. The gift of your breath and how lucky you are to be alive. Thank you very much.
Thank you.